Are you ready? Dr. Stanton? I'd like to welcome everybody to the Washington Elementary School District Governing Board meeting for Thursday, October 14th, 2021, and it's currently 7 o'clock straight up. And with that, Ms. Tucker, would you be kind enough to give us a roll call, please?
Thank you, President Adams. Governing Board members present: Governing Board President, Mr. Bill Adams; Governing Board Vice President, Ms. Nikki Whaley; Governing Board members, Ms. T. Lambert and Ms. Jenny Abbott Bayardi.
Thank you. And if I may, I'd like to call for a moment of silence. Thank you. If you'd stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have a motion for the adoption of the October 14th, 2021 regular and executive session meeting agenda?
Moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. May I have a motion for the approval of the September 23rd, 2021 special, regular, and executive session meeting minutes? Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. May I have a motion for the approval of the September 30th, 2021 special meeting minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Current events and acknowledgements. Board? Ms. Whaley.
Thank you, President Adams. I just want to acknowledge all of our teachers and staff who are hopefully enjoying some much-deserved time off during fall break. I also want to thank all of our administrators and folks that have been in the building this whole last week. I understand that it is tough times right now. I also want to acknowledge the group of folks that have joined outside the building. I respect people's right to voice their concerns, and so, you know, agree to disagree in certain situations, but I do want to acknowledge that I know the board has received emails and just wanted to acknowledge that. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
And I too acknowledge the administrators and administration for your hard work during these last couple of weeks. I know it's been very difficult, so thank you for your hard work and your support, and I hope that you get a little bit of rest at some point soon. And kids get some extra rest because you're coming back on Monday.
Thank you. Lambert?
I just echo my fellow board members on thanking everybody and what they have gone through. I also appreciate the emails and hearing parents' concerns. They are their children's best advocate. And as we move along here, I hope that everybody has had a good fall break and ready to start back fresh next Monday. Thank you.
Thank you. I, too, will echo my fellow board members' statements in regards to everybody having a good fall break and coming back rested. We know that next week's going to be a very hard week, and I wish the administration and our staff and everybody involved much care. I also would want to acknowledge the individuals that are outside and say the same as my fellow board members, that I appreciate everybody being out. I appreciate those that are out there and raising their voice. At one time, many years ago, Ms. Lambert and I were doing the same thing. So we definitely believe in the process, and as parents, we've been there and we understand. I also want to acknowledge the emails that we received, that 99% of them have been gracious and eloquent and explained their position. And we all, forgive me for speaking for the board, I appreciate very much the professionalism of the emails that have been written to us. And there's quite a number of them, but again, thank you for for taking the time to write all of us. We do hear you all. And with that, I'll pass it over to the superintendent, please.
Mr. President, members of the board, members of the audience, it seems like it's always a busy time, although it is fall break for many of our staff, and we do want them to rest, rejuvenate, and be ready when we come back on Monday. Just a quick update, we had our MTSS, which is multi-tiered system of support meeting with our departments, and we're working on communication as a team, as a whole system. So one system working on communication from cabinet to the departments and the departments to the cabinet. So I want to keep updating the board on that as it comes along. I do want to recognize Tracy, one of our principals. Her father passed away, and it was a beautiful chance to meet your family. And a beautiful, I didn't get to see the ceremony. I came ahead of time, but I know Dr. Bailey did. And again, we just want to, say how much we care about you, Tracy. And again, thank you, and we love you very much. We also had a task force meeting with Kathy Hoffman, Ready for Schools. Pam's not here tonight, but we've been on that committee working on ways that we can get our kids to re-engage and come back to schools. And so I want to thank Kathy Hoffman and her team for that work as well. And then just finally, like I say, it is fall break, and so we hope everybody is resting on our staff. Obviously, the people at the district office, that's our jobs, and that's what we do. But for our folks that are here, they're rest up and come back. We'll be ready to go on Monday. Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Thank you so much. So now we go on to student recognition, and Dr. Stan, I think it's yours. Student recognition, perfect score, English, language.
You got it, Mr. Adams. I'm turning it over to Mrs. Moore. Mrs. Moore, you ready to go?
I am. Good evening, President Adams, governing board members, and community. Tonight, we're very excited to recognize a number of students who got either a perfect score on the ELA English AZM2 test or on the math. And so you recall achievement on either one or the other. And we're extremely proud of them. Once again, these were not easy situations in which, that majority of the year was online, but they excelled and they did an amazing job, and they represent 14 of our schools. So we would like to thank our communications team. They put together a short video to honor these students and recognize them. So we'd like to do that now.
Thank you. Wow.
So teachers who all worked with these students. We're very proud of all of them.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much. With that, we go on to public participation. Stucker.
Yes, President Adams, we have received several requests for public participation, and I will read them all. I'm not going to turn the timer on for the brief short ones, but there are a few that are very long, and at that point I will turn the 3-minute timer on. There were 4 individuals who sent in the exact same statement, so I want to say their names and where they identified themselves from, and then I'll read the statement. Jessica Shafier from Desert Foothills, Devin Shafier from Desert Foothills, Aaron Chaparano from Sunset, and Kristen J. Cox from Acacia. The comment that all 4 of them said was, "I stand with advocates for choice with WESD." The next one is from Derek Foggy. He is from the Arroyo School. "I stand with advocates for choice within WSD. Parents, students, and staff should have the right to choose. If we want to make real change to mitigate health, let's start with that, with what we feed our students. If we're truly concerned about their health and safety, that is where we would put our focus and attention. This is not about health, it's about compliance." I'm going to do the timer for this one. This one comes from Viviana Herrera from Acacia Elementary School. "At the beginning of the school year, I signed an opt-out form for the school year 21-22 stating that I was not sending my children with a mask to school for the remainder of the school year, and my opinion has not changed. Nowhere on that form did it state that in any fine print that the WSD board taking the choice away and going back on their word. Only a parent can change it in a written form, which I haven't and will not do. It's our right as parents, as stated on the Parents' Bill of Rights, to make our children's medical decisions, Section 3 and 5. Another issue, which is another huge issue in my eyes, is the fact that my kids, who are good kids, are going to be treated differently from the other students solely because of their personal beliefs. To me, that sounds like discrimination. Also, I may add that in the United States of America, every child has the right to the same equal educational opportunity. If my kids get pulled, separated from their learning classroom, or suspended, causing them to fall behind because of a mask, I will contact my lawyer and you will be hearing from us. I truly hope it doesn't get to that, but my kids' health and education is my priority, and I will do anything and everything in my power to make sure that they get treated equally and get the equal education they rightfully deserve. Considering we as a state of Arizona are one of the worst ranked for education, the last thing our kids need is another bump on the path to hold them back. The WSD board's sole main concern should be educational to better assist our kids' learning. They should be making smart educational decisions, like making sure every teacher who chooses to wear a mask can have access to clear masks so that kids can still see their lips for those who have difficulty hearing and pronouncing words. One of my kids had a speech delay. She looks at the mouth of her peers for reassurance of what sounds are being articulated. Since her teacher wears a mask, which is totally fine since it's her choice, I would rather my child's mouth be seen and corrected when it's not using the right letter or placement of tongue, and that is hard with a mask, which is why she will not be forced to wear one, because I believe it would only enable bad speech. My other child has asthma and already has difficulty breathing. Sometimes I have made him wear a mask, only did him more harm, causing him to have more asthma attacks, which is why I will never make him wear a mask specifically for long periods of time, and neither should any teacher. So please reconsider the opt-out form. This is our children's future, and you're messing with them, and it's not fair. The next one is from Crystal Black. She's from the Chaparral and Desert Foothills area. I stand with advocates for choice within WSD. No mask or vaccine mandates. The health and safety of children should be decided by parents, not the school board. The next one is from Danielle Quitter from Acacia. I stand firm on my constitutional rights to choose against the WSD school board's directive to force my child to wear a psychological and physiological damaging mask for hours at school every day. This is a directive that has no concrete empirical evidence backing it, yet its detrimental effects has been proven in studies which I can provide links for. The school board is violating our constitutional rights to send our children to school freely and unhindered. This is the opposite of their duty to ensure the right to life of all students. They state they are following CDC guidelines, which in its entirety is compromised by conflicts of interest. They are funded by drug companies and hundreds of other multi-million-dollar corporations who have no business being involved in public health. This absolutely destroys the CDC's credibility. We are loving and educated parents. We will not stand by and let you impose this mandate on our precious innocent children for a virus that is extremely survivable and curable. This mask mandate is an assault. The school board needs to focus on teaching them about nutrition and how to naturally support their immune, physical, mental, and emotional health instead. Enough is enough. Stop the trauma and stop the nonsense. Thank you for listening. The next one is from Teresa Forsyne from Sunburst. I stand with advocates for choice within WSD. We as parents should have the choice for what is best for our children. The next one is from Miss Sarah Hackett. She's an employee at Lookout Mountain. Hello, as a teacher and parent in WSD, I would like to address the mask issue. I am a firm believer that parents should have the option of whether or not their child wears a mask at school. People who want to protect themselves can wear a mask. Parents who feel comfortable with their kids not wearing a mask can have that option. Numbers are going down. We've been in school for over 2 months. My classroom has managed fine without mask. As a teacher, it's very difficult to teach, read, and interact with kids while wearing a mask. Not to mention having to manage who has the mask on properly, who forgot their masks, how the masks are worn, extra unnecessary work. Thank you. The next one is from Caitlin Foggy from Aurora. To the governing board members who voted to universally mandate masks for our students, do not be confused in thinking your mask mandate is keeping students safe. The fact that their children is what's keeping them safe, which is supported by data from the CDC that has astonishingly low transmission rates within our district. According to the CDC, 686 children have died from coronavirus in the United States. While I mourn and emphasize with these parents, this data shows that coronavirus does not pose a risk to children. The week that you voted to mandate the mask, we had 45 active corona cases in our district. According to the district's website, we serve over 25,000 students, not including staff. In case you were wondering, 45 cases out of 25,000 is a 0.18%. I'm happy to announce that we have received over 125 signatures to an online petition against these mandates. While that number is small, it's nearly 3 times as many cases we had the week you voted to mandate masks. We, the parents, invoke our right to make medical decisions for our children. We, the parents, demand to be heard, and it is your responsibility as elected officials to listen. Out of the signatures received, 95% of our signees said they would be considering other options for educating their students for our opt-out forms, if our opt-out forms are not honored. And that's just the parents we could reach within 10 days. I imagine much more will pursue their options as well. Do the right thing and honor our opt-out forms. Just as Nikki Whaley chose to exercise her liberty not to wear a mask as evidenced by social media posts by the ASBA, we the parents demand to be given the same liberties for our children. The next one is from Roxanne Rignier from Moon Mountain. No mandates, no vaccines, parents' choice. The next one is from Angela Messina from Aurora, teacher. Last board meeting, the board voted to mandate without having input from the community and staff in which they represent. The data was not true data. The opt-out form was not communicated well, and therefore whatever data is not a true picture of what the community wants. What is happening in WSD is a reason for me withdrawing my son from the district. Comments made at the last board meeting show me that me withdrawing my son does not matter to the board. As a teacher, me looking elsewhere does not matter to them as well. My son deserves better, and me as his parent will be the one that makes the decision on what's best for him. The next one is from Jatsiri Perkins from Abraham Lincoln. My name is Jatsiri. I have 3 children in WSD. I'm an involved parent at Abraham Lincoln. I am the current guild treasurer. I'm on site council and executive board. I have dedicated myself to being a homemaker. I make the decisions for what school my kids will attend and what is best for them. I have the choice. I believe I have picked a phenomenal school for them, and I shouldn't have to be considering pulling them out of where they are. Since the beginning of this whole thing, my family got COVID. My parents were wanting to be tested, and no one would test my mom as she has to go directly to the hospital, and that she would be tested there and sent home. Long story short, opinions and thoughts of what was best for her was imposed on her, and she never came back out. I am sick and tired of people making decisions on what they think is best for me and my family. She should have had the choice to get tested anywhere she wanted and then to decide what was best for her. I see that the same decisions are being made for my children, and you don't know what is best for us. You don't know our struggles. I am not an anti-vaxxer or anti-mask, but I am anti-mandate. All I need you to do as a district is to inform me of possible exposures, and I can make the choice of what is right for my family. Thank you for this attention. May God bless all of you, and God bless America, the land of the free and the brave, not the mandated and scared. Thank you. The next one is from Josh Perkins, Abraham Lincoln. Hello, board members. My name is Josh Perkins. I've had the pleasure to speak with Dr. Bailey, and I understand that there is a concern for public health during our current crisis and that WSD wants to do its part to help. However, the mandating of masks should not be a consideration at this point. I have looked at the little bit of research that is available in the effectiveness of cloth masks, which the use of cloth masks is what is being proposed, I imagine. And even the CDC says more research on cloth masks are needed to inform their use as an alternative to surgical masks, respirators in the event of short or high demand situations. To our knowledge, only one random controlled trial has been conducted to examine the efficiency of cloth masks in healthcare settings, and the results did not favor the use of cloth masks. He cites an article. The same article continues to say on the cloth mask should not be mandated for healthcare workers who should, as priority, be provided proper respiratory protection. If the district is willing to provide the proper mask and have them fitted per CDC guidelines, then I could see the potential benefits. Otherwise, there is no data to support this decision, and the mask mandate should be removed immediately, and masks should remain optional. If the board has data showing the effectiveness of cloth masks in stopping the spread of COVID-2, then please present this data. I would be interested in your findings since a study completed in January 2021 by the National Academy of Sciences in the United States of America. There are currently no and this is a quote, there are currently no studies that measure the impact of any kind of mask on the amount of infection SARS-CoV-2 particles from human action. We have been asked to follow the science. Unfortunately, there is one at this point, and it is not appropriate to make any kind of mandate. Thank you for your consideration of these facts. The next one, I will start the timer. This one is from Roberta Kayada, and from Lookout Mountain. I am a staff member of WSD. First, I have a question for the board. If masks work and protect us all from COVID, why is this meeting not open to the public? Why are our parents and students not allowed here tonight? I cannot believe the school board's latest decision. When we are getting ready to start this school year, the board came out and said that they were not going to mandate masks this year. That was going to be a personal choice for the parents and the WSD staff to choose whether their family and staff members needed to wear or wanted to wear a mask while at school or on any district property. Then 2 days before school started, you had a special meeting and caved into opposing opinions and decided that masks were to be worn on all district properties unless each family or staff signed an opt-out form, which I did. Now, after another special meeting, you decided that this doesn't matter, that what each family thinks is best for them and their students, or what staff think is best for them, because you have a need to control and demand. We must all now again wear a mask on all district properties. I do not understand the reasoning behind the board's decision. I work in a classroom with another teacher and 22 students. Both of us teachers are vaccinated, and 100% of our students' parents had opted out of wearing the mask. At the end of August, a student was exposed to COVID. The student came to school wearing their mask and all day except for eating times. Within a few days, both of us teachers tested positive, and so did 4 students. If masks and vaccines work, can you explain to me how we all came down with COVID within a day or 2 of each other? If masks work, if masks work, not one of our students should have gotten COVID. If a mask worked, then the student who was first exposed should not have been able to spread it to the rest of us. Masks do not work in the prevention of COVID. Masks are a way to make you feel you are doing something to help the virus. Do we mandate masks for the flu or strep throat? No, we don't. And more people die from the flu than that die from COVID. Do we mandate vaccines for everyone? No parents can opt out if that is what they think is best for their families, whether you or I agree. Masks and vaccines should be a personal choice. In case you forgot, this is the United States of America. We have freedoms and the Constitution that regulates things like this. If you as a board feel the need to wear a mask, then by all means wear one. If you are afraid of COVID, stay locked up in your homes, but please stop telling us what to do. I would like to thank you, Mr. Bill Adams and Ms. T. Lambert, for having the courage to vote against the mask mandate and leave it up to parents and staff to choose for themselves and their families for what is right for them. Please reverse your decision on this matter. You have already done it a few times. What's one more? The next one I will read is from Amy Curlin from the Lookout Moon Mountain area. As a parent of a child at Lookout Mountain and a parent of a former Lookout Mountain student, I am writing to address the board. I strongly believe masks should be optional for teachers and students. I firmly believe parents should have the option to choose whether or not their child wears a mask at school. Numbers are going down, and we will have an option to vaccinate soon. I again will need to turn on the timer. This one is from Jacqueline Aiken, Mokata Aiken. Jacqueline Mokata Aiken from Tumbleweed. Members of the governing board, as a parent of 3, I'd love to know what is wrong with the original plan to opt out masks that was in place, because it seemed like it was working for all families. Let me tell you, as a mom and my personal experience with kids and mask wearing, my oldest son got to the point where he didn't take it off because he was afraid he'd be arrested. He also says it's harder to make friends in 4th grade with everyone masked. My daughter, who never had breathing problems, has more respiratory issues to date, which all started after wearing masks. And my youngest, who was in kinder last year, did better online learning, though he hated it, because he could actually see his teacher's mouth and smile. When we finally went to in-person learning with a mask, his letter sounds regressed, and he had a harder time learning. He also missed out on all the fun and hands-on learning kindergarten is supposed to provide these kids to set their school careers off on the right foot. All of my kids have thrived this year in school with the option to opt out of wearing a mask, and now you're going to change all that with no real valid reasons. What happens to choice and family choice and decisions made by the school board with parent input at open meetings? At this district, decisions are made, and we, the parents, are merely allowed to stand by and watch online quietly. Ms. Whaley, my question directly to you is what makes you get to call a special meeting without parents' knowledge or consent to vote this through? And where is the debate to weigh both sides on the issue? Unless you change your mask policy, there will be 3 less children enrolled in your district, and not just removed from the school that we love, but from the district altogether, because we will no longer support a district like WSD, which makes such rash decisions in favor of their personal beliefs and opinions versus the overall whole. You don't let parents until the meetings. You make decisions that affect our children without our consent or vote or permission. Enough is enough. Below is an article showing just how harmful these masks on our children are that you should all read, including Ms. Peterson, who mentioned in the last meeting that she'd love to do research herself. This person did cut and paste the article, and so I'll make sure that it is shared. The next person is Deja Hall from Acacia Elementary. Members, respectfully, Dr. Fauci and the CDC have published studies stating masks do not protect against COVID. The entire state of Arizona has 0 mask mandate, and people are living their lives normally again. Our kids deserve better than the social engineering of mask wearing and fear propaganda. Some of you very board members have been called out for not wearing masks publicly, and we demand the same rights for our kids. Make it a choice if you must, but do not tread on, or we shall have you removed. I stand with WSD advocates for medical choices on masks and COVID. You work for us, and you are bound to our will, not your own political agenda. Thank you in advance. It is a wise move to save your jobs as the economy is not looking so great. Let's go, Brandon. The next one is from David Gain from Tumbleweed Elementary, Mr. Billy, Miss Nikki, Miss Jenny, Miss T, Miss Lindsay. Please take the time to consider staying at the job that you feel is more important than the job you were elected to do. You have no backbone and are messing with my child's education, my son's amazing teachers and faculty members, as well as the future generation of Americans. You are all worthless, and I demand your immediate resignation. My son, Jager, is in 3rd grade in Miss Lanier's class at Tumbleweed Elementary. He has been an overachiever and the teacher's favorite student every year since preschool. Last year, my son suffered through virtual learning with an old lady as a teacher who had to learn the computer from her 2nd grade students. This is unacceptable. Now you tell me my son, who I have already given permission not to wear a mask again? I cannot read the rest of it because of profanity. The next one is from Melissa McDonald from Moon Mountain Elementary. Good evening, governing board members. I would like to address you about the mask mandate. I was wondering why you were taking it upon yourselves to take the choice away from parents and make medical decisions about their children when some do believe that the masks do more harm than good with scientific facts to prove their case. Please reconsider your decision not to force your beliefs upon everyone else. Also, I wanted to take this time to express what a difficult time it has been to not be able to contribute to my community within my school. I know, as a matter of fact, our teachers deserve and would love to have the help from volunteers, and they do appreciate as much help as they can receive from any parent with all that they have to do in educating our kids, and volunteers are a very important part of our community and schools. And with the cases of COVID seeing a downward trend, I hope you reconsider letting volunteers back into our schools and also giving parents the right to choose when it comes to their children and these masks. If you go off of data, it does show that the decision of giving people a choice is paying off with the downward trend in cases, so please do not take them away. Also, one more thing, if any of you need any help in finding actual scientific data about the effects that masks have on our children's mental and physical health, please feel free to email me. Thank you. The next one is from Sarah Wilson from Abraham Lincoln. Our children's health care decisions belong to parents and parents alone. I stand with advocates for WSD. My child, my values, no mask mandates and no vaccine mandates. The next one is from James Townsend from Saguaro Elementary. It is unnecessary. Parents should be able to choose if they want their kids to wear a mask or not. The waiver was doing the job just fine. The next one is from Matt Krebs from Acacia Elementary. My comment is to the 3 board members who voted to revoke the mask mandate. Voting to revoke the mask mandate. Since only 2 of the 5 board members responded to my emails last week, I'm going to attempt to present any information today. It is clear to me that most of you sitting here don't care what I have to say. I hope it is now obvious to the parents and staff of this district that the board has been taken over by politics. There is no room for debate, whether it's the emotions and agenda of Nikki Whaley that has set policy. And by the way, we've all seen the photos of you maskless at the National NSBA conference. Thank you, Bill Adams and Lindsay Peterson, for taking your roles seriously and engaging my communication last week. This is what real leaders do. They do not hide from the public. The next one is from Vanessa Matthew McConkey from Manzanita. Many of us parents would like to speak at the board meeting as we want to be involved in our children's education. If masks truly work, why close off the board meetings to parents who deeply care about children? We aren't sure you actually care for our children, especially since teachers, support staff, and principals are face-to-face with our kids every day and have been for months. Are you truly trying to protect us and our kids, or are you hiding and avoiding the difficult conversations us parents are trying to have with you? Many of us have reached out to you as board members. What will it take for you to actually respond and not be vague answers, lies, hiding truth, not knowing what to say, and can't truly back your decisions? Again, if the masks work, we want to see the data, because the data you have provided doesn't line up with the research done by many doctors, scientists, and others throughout the pandemic. Your job, which of our tax dollars are directed towards is to educate our children. The flu wasn't an issue over the years. What about the crappy food that is served in the cafeteria that is truly causing health issues and deaths? Why not direct your efforts towards things that actually make a difference instead of a diaper on our children's faces, things that will make life-changing differences? Us parents will not give up on this. You will see an uprising. I will do the timer for this one as well. This one is from Chris Legg from John Jacobs Elementary. Normally I do refer to someone in your roles as honorable. I have had to address you as honorable board members, but if you have any say-so on the mask mandate that is now being imposed on our children, many against the will of their parents' choice of the Washington School District, there is nothing honorable or respectable about you. How dare you assume you have the right to decide how we parents or children make health decisions for our children? And it could be based on whatever we want to base it on, because it's our freedom and choice in America. You're abusing these children, and when my son shows up at John Jacobs Elementary on Monday without a mask and you deny him his right to an education that my tax money is paying for, just know you're open for lawsuits, and you've seen it happen already. And if you haven't reached out to me personally, I'll show you $1 million suit against board members for making baseless decisions. It's all overreach of your authority. And just make sure whoever denies him his right to education that they're willing to sit with me and put it in writing and sign their name in ink to it, as we'll see how this works. I don't even need to get into COVID numbers or care what your beliefs are either way. For you to think you have a right to put a muzzle on my child with a mask has blatantly been proven not to work, then you are too stupid to be making decisions for our district and need to resign. This is a parent's decision to make, and if you want to leave it up to schools to make the decisions, go ahead, and they can deal with us parents directly, and they will have to answer to the people in their community also. Let whoever is signing this letter of discrimination know I'll be walking with my son to John Jacobs Elementary Monday morning at approximately 7:20, maskless, and if denied, please have the letter ready. If not, my son will be attending school, getting his right to the education, maskless and healthy, just like he has been through this entire pandemic and treated no different than any other student in the classroom. Thank you. The next one is from Tiffany Khalil from Richard E. Miller. I want to address the board this evening specifically to those who voted yes to take the rights of our parents and staff to opting out of masking. The special session called on 9:30 at the behest of one individual needing no input from our constituents or us as parents moved forward to vote on mask mandates and change the current policy which appeased both sides. Legal counsel for WSD even stated in an email that current policy could be maintained and no changes needed to be made. The board voted to eliminate a choice that did not belong to them. It belonged to the parents and the staff. My child has never been disciplined for anything since she was a kinder to a fifth grader, and I will not stand aside and let the board decide that exercising our medical freedom will result in disciplinary action. I am asking for the agenda on 10/28 to include an opt-out option for mask mandates as an action discussion item, and the appropriate board members use the powers they hold to overturn the previous vote and enact the opt-out option for masking. You have the authority to make You have the authority to make this right for the community who voted you into this position you hold today. I stand with Advocates for Choice in WESD. The next one is Stephanie Kokak from Acacia Elementary. Thank you for allowing our community to have input. Choice matters. The next one is from Amanda Lindsay at Abraham Lincoln. Along with board members, along with hundreds of other WSD parents would like to continue the current mask choice for our children and staff. As a parent survey blasts through all avenues like your weekly COVID update is and would probably prove that this is true. It worked for everyone. Please change this mandate at tonight's board meeting. The Arizona Bill of Rights, number 3 and 5, allows us to have rights and make these choices for our children. The only thing the mandate does is to continue to divide our children. As you know, many studies have been published proving masks are not necessary for children. 3 of you who voted for this mandate have been seen in public without mask. At Disneyland, ASBA meetings and conferences are no exception to non-mask wearing. If you were to abide by your current vote, you allow kids with licensed school, you don't quarantine for RSV, flu, or pneumonia. You also allow parents to decide if they want to fully vaccinate their children who could spread viruses to others. Yet we can't decide if our own children need to wear a mask. Makes zero sense. When did our rights as parents vanish? Also, stop quarantining for our children. Let us decide that. They have missed enough education. The next one is from Janelle Hack from Moon Mountain. I have a few items that I would like addressed. Number 1, what is the reasoning behind the mask mandate, the sudden mask mandate for WSD students? Why are my emails and phone calls being ignored? You are all put in the position by us and don't feel the need to provide information. Why? My opt-out form for my child did not state that there were exceptions or changes. How can you revoke this legally? If the face masks work, I would like a breakdown of the data used to determine this. With a 0.18% positivity rate, what are you trying to accomplish? Have you researched the long-term effects of face masks on children, mental and physical? Are you addressing the current rise in children's suicide rates? It is our taxpayer dollars that appoint you, yet you continue to make choices without consideration of our community and the children. The bottom line of your job is education. How is it helpful? Putting us as parents and our children in a predicament to have to choose other schools and other avenues for education. How will you address students who do not comply with the mask mandate? How will you address when parents call their children out on 10/18 as sick but refuse to comply with your updated mandate? The next one is from Karen Brown from John Jacobs Elementary. Please reconsider the new mandate. Let families decide if they'd like to wear a mask or not. The mandates that were previously in place worked just fine. I will have to turn the timer on for this one as well. This one is from Victoria Romero from Moon Mountain. Hello, Governing Board members. I am emailing you today in regards to the mask mandate. Myself and others in the community are very concerned about your decision to take our freedom of choice away. Myself and others as if we took a step backwards. Myself and others feel as if we've taken a step backwards with your decision. The community has questions. Why? Is it based on new information that you have not yet shared with us? Is it based on certain data? If so, what data was that? Also, how can you collect data about COVID and our children if there's no district-wide testing? You simply cannot. If it is data of our children calling out sick, it should not be considered. It should not be considered as all COVID cases. Children still get sick with colds, flu, strep throat, gastritis, hand, foot, or mouth disease, and many more illnesses. These are just a few to name. Not only have we not eradicated all other illnesses, masks can and will make them worse. The best N95 masks only keep out particles that are 3 microns in size. COVID-19 particles are 1 microns, which are smaller and do easily pass through N95 masks, which also means that surgical and cloth masks let a more substantial amount through, thus defeating the purpose. Here's just one example of how masks can make the health of our children worse. A child coughs or sneezes until their mask, then they touch it and take it off for eating and drinking, then place it on a surface, not sure if it's clean, now those viruses and bacteria are transferred to the surfaces that many children have previously touched, and now the mask is directly back on their face. Not only have they spread their germs, the mask has now picked up other viruses and bacteria too. Now they inhale. Does this sound healthy for anyone? Even if they do not take off their mask from their face, they are constantly touching everything, then touch their mask, then breathe in cross-contamination. With that being said, there are other scientific studies that are about this topic, old and new ones that are available. It does take time and a lot of researching, but it is there. Please reach out to our community members who have done this and are willing to help you educate yourselves with the whole truth. Science is not one-sided, never was and never will be. We are not asking you to give up your right to mask up. We just want our equal right to not mask our children and teachers. Teachers know all too well the basic facial expressions and movements are key to teaching a class of pre-K through 6th graders using facial expressions. During lessons, it helps students. That's the last one.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker. And thank you to everybody who participated in public participation. We do hear you all. With that, I'm going to go ahead and ask for approval of the consent agenda. Oh, does anybody have anything to pull on consent agenda? Hearing none, may I have an approval for the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And motion passes. But before we move on, I want to take a moment to thank those that have been so kind to give us public gifts and donations. Albertsons Companies, Arizona Diamondbacks Foundation, Eyeglass World, Kroger Fries, Love, Accepted, and Heard Foundation, Peter Pepper Pizza, and Salt River Project. Thank you all so much. So that moves us into information discussion items, elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, ESSER grant dollars. And forgive me, Dr. Stannis, thank you.
Mr. Adams, member of the boards, member of the audience, Mrs. Moore will be presenting to the board the elementary and secondary emergency relief, also known as ESSER grant fund update. Mrs. Moore?
Thank you, President Adams, governing board members, and community. As Dr. Stanton said, tonight we will be going over a review of the funding from our ESSER grants and relief funds that were provided. They were appropriated by Congress, and then they were distributed through the Arizona Department of Education. These are one-time funds that have been awarded to our school district, and they're for use over the next 3 years. All of the funding must be utilized to meet district needs, and these are as a result of the impact that COVID has had on our district. So here's an overview of the funds, and once again, this is a system-wide impact that we were looking at. You'll see the funding amounts for the ESSER 1, 2, and 3 grants. ESSER 1, the focus of that grant was emergency response to COVID. And so these really were looking at, the immediate impact that happened once we went into the pandemic. And so the funding for that grant covered years 2021 and 21 and 22. For each of these grants, or for the ESSER 1 grant, we actually had to put 1% a proportionate share to our private schools, and so that amount was added onto there. ESSER 2 was focused on supporting recovery efforts, and so really taking a look at the reopening of our schools once we move past the initial time. This goes over 3 years, and so covers also 21, 22, and 22 and 23. And then ESSER 3, the focus for this grant is the learning opportunities, social emotional learning that we're using and supporting, and then also supporting those recovery efforts. And this covers the 3 years, goes through 23, 24, and once again, when we look through this, we were asked to do some stakeholder consultation, and we're going to talk about that and what that looked like. And then 20% once again was required for us to set aside in order to really focus on evidence-based strategies that really can address the disruption to our learning that occurred during the pandemic. And then also as well as the safe return to in-person learning and instruction. So with ESSER 3 consultation, in June, we had some PLA Professional Learning Academy meetings with our principal groups, and we asked them to provide feedback in a survey. And then in July, we also worked with you, the governing board, to get your interest on how we would utilize these ESSER 3 funds. And we compiled that information, and from that feedback, we identified 4 areas for us to focus on. And so you'll see here the learning opportunities and social emotional needs, educational technology, staff support, and then also the safe and healthy school environment. We also got information from our staff, and we had about a 15% return rate on the survey from them. And once again, in these 4 areas, some of the information we received from that feedback was really looking at smaller class size and some additional staff to meet our student needs as a result of COVID, and then also curriculum adoptions and intervention materials to use in the classroom. Under educational technology, we were looking at the feedback we received was replacing teacher devices, laptops upgraded for our classified staff, connectivity, and then also getting to the point where we have one-to-one student devices available for our students to use. Under staff support, areas that they identified was retain and recruit staff, staff one-time pay, and staff raises, quarantine coverage. We're also looking at collaborative planning time, and then an increase to the rate of our substitutes that we bring in to support our classrooms. And under safe and healthy environments, looking at some of our HVAC air replacements, and then also water bottle filling stations for each of our schools. Our information that we received from our families, we did consultation with them as well. We had a 17% return rate from our families. And once again, in those 4 areas, some of the things that they identified were the smaller class sizes, extracurricular activities, summer school. They were looking at quarantine support for students, and then social emotional learning, and there were varied ideas of what that would look like. Under educational technology to our families, the classroom technology to support the student learning, but they also shared that they had some concerns about a little bit too much screen time, and so really that hands-on learning that they were looking for. And then staff support, retaining and recruiting staff, and then increasing staff salaries. And under safe and healthy communities, once again, HVAC replacement, and then also those water bottle filling stations, and so that's what we heard from our families. We also met with community members, and so you'll see the list here of the stakeholders that were represented at that meeting that was held on August 20th. And here again, under those 4 areas, this was the feedback we received from our community members. Interventions to address the academic impact and loss of instructional time with students. Additional Wi-Fi for our families. Under staff support, PD for staff on interventions, social emotional learning, and then other student supports as needed. And then under safe and healthy environments, they identified the HVAC replacement, rapid testing, and then water bottle filling stations. And so those were the areas they identified. So then the process for evaluating and prioritizing all the information we received, we reviewed the feedback, we identified the needs from the school and department leaders. We looked at the survey feedback from our staff, families, and community stakeholders, and then federal programs determined the allowability and fit because all 3 of these grants had very specific criteria that they had to meet. Once again, the purpose of the ESSER 3 grant was really focused on those learning opportunities and social emotional learning, as well as supporting recovery efforts, and then the system-wide impact for the entire district. And then our leadership team, BLT, prioritized and categorized those needs by the low, medium, high for a systems-wide impact, and looking once again at the priorities. And then we kept the emphasis on addressing the highest priorities and emergency needs as related. So once we did this, we prioritized those activities, and we sent to each department that was involved to review the needs, develop a proposal of what that would look like, determine the budget, the costs, the quotes that would go along with that, and then the sustainability, because once these monies go away, we do need to still be able to sustain and have the funding to do so. We confirmed with ADE, once again, to make sure that it was allowable, and then we also had to make sure we had that 20% that was set aside specifically for the ESSA evidence-based strategies that we would be using to address the learning loss. And then to leverage the funds, we had to do the closeout of ESSER 1. We had to shift recovery emergency needs over to ESSER 2 to free up some of the funds. And then once again, prioritize learning opportunities and the long-range impact to ESSER 3. And you know, that it goes through 23-24, but then how do we sustain that after that? So for ESSER 1, going back to how the funds were utilized and prioritized. You'll see here the dollar amounts in each of those categories. And the original grant application was submitted back in August of 2020. We leveraged enrollment stabilization grant funds to support the COVID needs that we had to address during last year. And then the grant is being closed out, and the funds have been spent. And so this grant is pretty much covered. And you can see from the grant on the graph on the other side the breakdown. And once again, the focus was in the area of just that COVID response, that emergency response piece that we had to put in place. So these were some of the areas under the safe and healthy environment. 47% of the funds went under there. We focused on additional maintenance staff, some of the excess electricity costs that were as a result of the air scrubbers that we put in all of our classrooms and that were operated during the closures. We had protective barriers, face shield costs that were related to that, containers and bags for meal distribution, maintenance equipment, disinfecting sprays, some of the additional pieces that we needed to ensure the maintenance of the schools. Some contracted services for emergency cleaning of classrooms once COVID was identified in a room, PPE, health supplies, and then cleaning and maintenance supplies. And so that was the bulk of that grant. With staff support, 24% of that went to emergency substitute hours and sub-certification for our classified staff, and that was pivotal in helping us to cover classrooms and allowing for extra support. And then excess unemployment insurance costs, and then indirect costs for district operations, and that was about 1% of that grant. Under the ed tech area, 23% Chromebook carts were purchased, staff computers, student Chromebooks, hotspots to allow our families to have connectivity from home, and then student support devices, headphones, and charging cords to support the Chromebooks. And then under learning opportunities and social emotional, about 22% of that grant was designated for that. That included our on-site services that we provided for students to come and have a place to learn safely. Instructional printing, when we first closed, we had to put packets out to our students, so those costs were involved in there, which was pretty significant printing costs. And then virtual lesson plan development, so we used the funds to make sure we had teachers that were assisting with that process. And then once again, that 1% of that grant did have to go to our private schools, and so we went through that. So ESSER 2, once again, the focus was on supporting the recovery efforts and once again getting our schools reopened. And so you can see the breakdown and the amounts that were spent there. And so the shift, once again, 37% were the safe and healthy pieces to get our schools back open. And so the original grant application was submitted in March of 2021. Revision is completed, and it was submitted actually last week. And we've been working with them this week to get some of the revisions done. So we're moving nicely on that. Those activities will be implemented through 21-22 and then also then through school year 22-23. Some specific details under this area. Under safe and healthy environment, 37%. We spent on PPE and health supplies, health services, COVID processing, air scrubbers and filters, contract for emergency services for the cleaning and custodial coverage, and then once again excess electricity due to the scrubbers being in the rooms, and also building operations during the closures. There was also some printing and COVID signage that we did through ESSER 2, and then coming soon, those water bottle filling stations that we'll be putting on our campuses will be coming out of the ESSER 2 grant. Under Ed Tech, with this area, once again, additional Chromebooks, getting those into our classroom. So approximately about 12,000 will be coming out of this grant. The ESSER 1 and 2 will be leveraged to purchase about 17,000 additional Chromebooks on top of that, and then carts to store those and charge those in. And then hotspots, and then also the increased bandwidth for our families to access the technology. So here again, some specifics. Staff support, 24% for For fiscal year '22, retention stipends were included with that. Excess health insurance costs covers which increased cost of health insurance due to COVID. And then there was no increased cost to the staff. And so that was something we utilized those funds to make sure that our staff didn't have the impact on their end. And then substitute support, once again, getting some emergency substitutes hours put in, certification for the classified staff to help support in our classrooms, and then the indirect cost for some of the district operations, and that's about 1.24% of the grant. And then learning opportunities, here again, leveraged the funds for the diagnostic work that we've been talking about, the math and the reading, in order for us to really determine the needs of our students. Some distance learning program that we've been able to offer for our students that have chose to remain online. And then with that piece, we've covered the teachers, the materials, and the support and the startup for those two programs that we have at Royal Palm and Desert View. And then for F21 summer school, for 32 schools, we were able to offer that this summer, and that was a tremendous opportunity to bring our students in, representing all of our schools to address some of the learning loss from there. So ESSER 3, we're looking ahead. And so once again, the focus of this grant is the learning opportunities, the social emotional, and supporting recovery efforts of getting back to school. And so you can see the breakdown here of working with that. And from the graph, you can see now the focus is really on those learning opportunities and how do we, get our students back and support them with their learning. The application has been completed and has been submitted as of last week. AD has informed us it can take up to about 30 days before we'll hear anything, and so we'll be watching that carefully, and they'll be reviewing and approving that. It can be revised as needed over the course of the grant, and then as needed, and the funds would be made available following that. The activities for this grant would begin implementation in the 21-22 school year and then carry us all the way through the 23-24 school year. Specifics under ESSER 3, that once again, just a reminder that 20% set aside had to be and was required to be utilized for the learning, those learning pieces. And so we had to make sure that as we did the grant, that we addressed all of those areas. And so it has to be evidence-based, and so Deirdre, our federal grants manager, and team have really been working with them to make sure that as we wrote the grant, we were identifying those pieces that would fit under that category. Another piece is looking at the reduced class size possibilities for the 3 years of the grant. So that would be for the 21-22 school year, 22-23, and then the 23-24 years as well. We prioritized getting some district intervention coaches that could support our teachers out in the classrooms working with our students. And so those 6 coaches that we have, that's what their focus is, and really getting the intervention in place and supporting job-embedded opportunities for our teachers to learn how to provide those much-needed interventions for our students. We also looked at adding a full-time social worker on each campus. This is an increase of about a 1.6 FTE. We had a couple of campuses that had part-time social workers, and so that represented 7 positions total. And so we would be increasing all of those to a full-time social worker on each of the campuses. District Social Services Flight Team, many of our students have been demonstrating trauma following this, and it's been quite a challenge to make sure we're meeting their needs, and especially those kind of higher level pieces. So we're proposing having 2 specialized social workers that would then be able to really support the more intense pieces that we have to deal with, and would be deployed as needed when a crisis would arise. Supplemental intervention resources to once again address those learning losses and really help once we've identified the need through the diagnostic test, then provide the interventions, and so the materials that would go along with that. We also continued our Learning A to Z and used funds to continue the RAS Plus program that our students have been able to use. This was very pivotal during the closure of our schools because students were still able to access this resource. It's very reading focused, gives lots of opportunities to support that. And so we continued, we leveraged some funds so that we can continue those for the next 3 years as well. And then for 22, 23, and 24, once again, offering a summer school for representation of all of our schools. And so the costs associated with that, including the teachers, the materials, transportation, anything else that would go with that. And so we're very excited to be able to offer those opportunities once again. And then 39% under those learning opportunities, we're looking at an Ela Curriculum Adoption. This was something we heard, definitely from our teachers, that they need some updated materials that really allow us to focus on our standards and instruction with our students. And so we'll be looking into that. We do have to look at the ongoing costs. Once again, this is a 3-year grant, so as we look for those adoptions, we need to make sure we can identify how the costs after the 3 years would then be secured. And then looking for a math curriculum adoption then in the 22-23 school year. And then once again, those ongoing costs. After that, we can continue through the 23-24, but then beyond that, making sure that we have that as well. And then the Renaissance Star Reading Math, which we've been able to put in place, we would continue with that and use the funds that would carry us then through 2024 to make sure we have those still to utilize in our classrooms. Right now, we're also offering Champions Academy, which is a training piece that's allowing us to build capacity in our schools and support teachers in the use of our diagnostic materials. And then the Renaissance Project Manager that we have acquired through the Renaissance program to offer the technical assistance and the professional development to make sure that we are able to get that system-wide to all of our schools. Staff support in ESSER 3 includes staff quarantine leave for the 21-22 school year, retention stipends possible for the 22-23, 23-24 school years, substitute coverage, looking at a structured incentive program to get more substitutes to come to Washington and support our schools. The ESSER project manager, we added this position. This is 3 years only. This, as you can see, these are 3 very large grants. There's a lot of management to it, a lot of pieces that both the business services team as well as the federal grants departments need support in order to make sure that we do this well and really can honor the work that is part of that. We also, as Dr. Stanton mentioned earlier, we're doing the MTSS project, and we're using some ESSER 3 funds to help leverage that, which once again strengthens our district departments, also our campuses, in making sure that we have a strong system in place to support our schools and our students. And then, once again, the indirect costs for district operations, and that's about 1%, 1.24% of the grant. Under safe and healthy environments, those scrubbers that we have in place, they have to have the air filters replaced. And so under ESSER 3, we're including that in there. There's a 3-year replacement. Every 3 years they have to be replaced. So that will cover us then through 23-24. We're looking at facility improvements that need to be done. Hand washing stations, 8 of those on campuses that currently don't have adequate on that. So making sure we get those in. HVAC replacement for 5 schools, and then the continued support of the work that needs to go along with that. And then nutrition services, taking a look at some of the kitchen pieces, the cleaning, and some efficiency and disinfection parts that have to go with that. And then maintenance, once again, the cleaning and disinfecting supplies that have obviously been on an increase through all of this. Under the Ed Tech, ESSER 2 and 3, we leveraged a lot of those grant monies to purchase the Chromebooks and the carts, so approximately about $5,600, and then for Chromebooks, approximately $1,100. And so 2 and 3, once again, we leveraged additional to make sure that we're going to get about 17,000 more into our system. There were some that were lost in the process of getting them out there, but we're still working towards getting as much technology available for our students as possible. We're also looking at leveraging ESSER 3 and bond monies to upgrade and replace some of our staff computers. Those are quickly getting outdated, and so those that have desktop computers and laptops are in need of some upgrade, and so funds will be leveraged for that. And then additional summer hours for our MIS technology team. Obviously, when we get this volume of technology in, it takes a while to process and get that so it's ready to be put out to the schools. And so just imaging those devices takes a lot. So looking at offering some additional hours for our team to get that done. And then wireless LAN upgrade to improve our connectivity speeds, and that, that's district-wide in all of our buildings to make sure we have that. So once again, as we mentioned, these are large grants to manage, and so we have some functional leaders that will be taking the lead on this. In each of these areas, we've identified the departments that are primarily impacted, and so you can see that in those areas. This definitely is a district-wide collaborative effort to make sure that we are successfully implementing all the things that we've set out to do with our grants. The oversight, myself and Danny will be taking a look at making sure that we are guiding our teams to get this done. We'll have that ESSER project manager, which will be working directly in business services but collaboratively with the federal grants and academic services team. And once again, some pieces that this person will help us to do is just that reviewing of the approval process, budget management, making sure that we're doing that. Compliance will be a huge piece. There's data collection, there's measurement, there's timelines that will go with this, and so that budget manager, project manager will be key in making sure that we stay on track with all of that. And once again, we want to evaluate all these pieces that we're putting in place. Not just because we'll be required to do so, but we need to know the effectiveness of all of the things that we've identified, how it is being successful and having an impact on our students, and then the reporting back out of the grants to everybody and the communication that goes along with that. So finally, once again, this is just kind of a recap of those 4 key areas that we identified. And I think as you see from each one of those, we really focused on how we are going to improve those learning opportunities and social emotional needs of our students, the technology focus, staff support, and then once again that safe and healthy equipment or environment for our students to be learning and our staff to be working in. And so at this time, we will be happy to answer any questions.
Governing board members, any questions? Yes, Ms. Wally.
Thank you, Lori, to go through all of that. It is a lot of detail, but I think when we're dealing with that much money, we need to know exactly where that money is going to be going. So I really appreciate all the work that was done. I also really appreciate the work that was done to really listen to all the different stakeholders, families and the staff, and then also those community orgs that represent so many of our different special populations that we work with. Sometimes it's hard to get a representative sample, and so that's a good alternative in lieu of that. Hopefully, we can build that capacity, but I appreciate the effort of talking to those communities that tend to be underrepresented or homeless population, foster, native, et cetera. The only question that I had, and I already kind of posed this to you, but one of the key parts that I think we took away is that it's only for a short amount of time, and also that we need to track impact. Those are the 2 things that I kind of took away, and I've mentioned it before, but in the past we kind of would say like, okay, this is what we want, but we wouldn't connect the dots between the intervention and the outcome. We would say this is the outcomes that we want, and get them, we either meet them or we don't, but we wouldn't be able to really say why we met them. It could have been any one of these 7 things or all 7 of these things that got us there. Can you talk a little bit more about the way that we're going to be tracking these interventions in order to make sure that we're getting the outcomes that we want, or what outcomes we're getting, because as you said, with it only being so much of money for a short amount of time, if we really do some winning stuff in this short amount of time, we want to make sure that we keep funding that and don't fund the things that maybe weren't as effective.
Absolutely, President Adams, Ms. Whaley. That is absolutely imperative that we do this through this process. And so that's why we felt it was very important to bring some of those tools in to measure effectively our student learning. You know, the pieces that we have in place already are interim assessments, those types of pieces were giving us some data, but having a diagnostic that really allows us to drill down on the academic growth of our students will be important. And so we'll be looking at regular use of that data, and that's part of that Champions Academy piece in which we are training our instructional coaches, our administrators, our teachers on how to really take a look at that. And we'll be breaking that down by subgroup population, you know, just really looking at when we put the interventions in place, what are the results we get and how can we measure that. So teams will be coming together to make sure that we are sharing that. Also with social emotional. As you know, we've brought Panorama on, and so the social services team and the committee is looking at, you know, what pieces of that survey data can we utilize to measure some of the social emotional pieces we're putting in place with that. And then, you know, as far as the compliance part of this, we are going to have to report outcomes on all of this. And so this project manager working with the business service team, as well as ours, will be identifying those additional metrics. And, you know, we'll be happy to report back when we come to kind of a determination of what that is. But as a team, we are going to have to, you know, really have that solidified so that when that reporting piece goes back to the state, we can also share back the results with us to, like you said, determine what do we continue once the 3 years are up. You know, we have to be thinking of that strategically so we can prioritize, once again, what we'll be funding.
I am glad that we have all of those better assessments. That's going to tell us, you know, if we're seeing growth, but I still am not understanding how you're going to tease out if you're, how you're going to be strategic about, like if you're doing 7 different interventions, how are you going to be able to tell which one made that outcome? I get that we have much better, we're going to be having much better assessment things. I'm just wondering if you can walk me through the process as how you would determine which of the interventions got us the outcomes.
President Adams, Ms. Whaley, as we are refining our process of interventions and those 6 coaches that we brought on board, we're helping to make the work more consistent in our schools as to what we're doing in those interventions. And so some of the, you know, piece in the one grant, we listed some intervention materials and supplementals that need to go in there. As a district team, we'll be identifying which ones, once again, are evidence-based, are approved by ADE, and then systemically getting those into our schools and making sure that will help us to you know, measure strategically some of those ones that we are, you know, going to be focusing on. There are lots of interventions out there that are very effective with students, but as far as some of the ones that we're going to identify as a district to measure, then those are the ones we'll be able to really see some results with.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Lambert?
Thank you. As you know, this is my world. What I'm trying to think of, because this is short term, and in implementing any plan, it's 3 to 5 years. I mean, you have to bring it in, train people, implement it, review it. So there's not usually, you know, in a year we're going to see a great change, because we have to put it in place as we're going along, which is why we can do revisions as we go along, because you'll be able to see what's going on. One of the things that interests me is having it tie in to our Title I plan and where our focus is in helping meet those needs and closing the gaps. And there's is it ARP, the American Rescue Plan, that's coming in. Basically, I think it's targeted for homeless youth and children. And will that be able to be coalesced in all this, in your planning and how you're approaching it and kind of utilizing the funds to help spread the effort go farther?
Yes, President Adams, Ms. Lambert, part of, I think, one thing we've been very proud of our team is that as we even started looking at the ESSER funds, we were looking at our other grants as well. We are a title grant district, and we do have funds available. So we really strategically were looking at what currently is under Title I or Title II or Title III that then could be utilized once the ESSER III, or the grants are up. And so we've already been thinking along those lines. As the additional funding comes in, once again, we're keeping our focus on those areas that we've identified. Those are key areas that we need to be looking at as a district anyway. And so, we can continue to identify how we're going to support what we're putting in place. And that's going to be key. And once again, I think that really that systemic impact to the entire district when we're looking at how we're going to leverage all of our funds that are available.
I think one of the things that I appreciate in the effort of all these extra funds is that with ESSER, we don't have to worry about supplanting. So we can utilize M&O, utilize our federal grants and the ESSER dollars together to help meet the goal, which is, of course, to improve the education for our children. So I really appreciate the work that you did and the level of depth that you went into getting input and shaping it and writing the plan. And putting that all together. So I thank you for that.
I did want to give credit to Ms. Deirdre May, who is our Director of Federal Grants, and you may have noticed that she is resigning and she's moving on to ADE. She has a great opportunity for growth, but she spent many hours assisting in this work, and so we can't thank her enough for getting that and working collaboratively with the business service team. And it truly has been a joint effort, but I did want to acknowledge the work that she put into this.
Well, we want to, am I on? Well, we want to wish Ms. May much success. She's really done such a fine job here at Washington. I wanted to, and I echo what my fellow board members are saying in regards to the work that has been done with this. Stakeholder input, due diligence through the roof, actually. Transparency in regards to how we proceeded and how we view things, and also the accountability component of it. A great foundation has been built. So the next 3 years, it's obvious to me that there's going to be much success. And these are the foundations for us making decisions. So I thank you so much. I also want to take a moment, it's already been expressed, but thank you and Dr. Stan and the rest of the team for taking the time with us as board members to go through all this and allow us to ask our questions and for us to do our due diligence before we even come here. So just great job and many, many thanks. Dr. Stanton? Anything to add, or should we move on? Okay, so then we'll go ahead and move on to reports. And sir, that's yours, I believe.
Mr. Adams, members of the board, members of the audience, we have been giving regular updates under each of our departments, and so I will start with the Administrative Service Report from Dr. Bailey.
Good evening, President Adams, members of the board. Thank you for allowing us to give you an update. I'm going to actually zero in on two different areas. One is preparation for when our students come back in a matter of days, and also an update on KidSpace and Arizona ASA. So preparation for October 18th. Actually, the week before we went on break, it was a very busy week. We were finishing up on panorama surveys, interim assessments, and then principals and teachers were working with the questions about mask mandate, and principals and teachers have done a great job. They were getting lots of questions, and especially principals were working with some of the staff that going through and working through the process. So what we are right now, we're in preparation for Monday. We have masks that are available if students do not come with masks. And if a student refuses to wear a mask, what will happen is that an administrator will make a phone call home. It's considered a dress code violation, so a school official, that is what a consequence is, a school official. If and then the parent will, if the parent continues to say that the student will not wear the mask, then there will be a separate area that will be set up for students, and they will be in that room. Classroom materials will be given to them, but they won't be allowed to go back into their regular classroom setting because it is a dress code violation. That's how we deal with all dress code violations according to our handbook. We'll continue to work with that student, and I applaud the principals and the teachers that will have a lot of the probably pressure or stress to work with them. So that's how we're working with that. I know principals have got calls, and I've talked to a number of parents. They've always been extremely respectful. They're pretty adamant on their voicing their opinions, but I've appreciated talking to them, and I know that also principals have. So we will work through the system. This is the first week of our next quarter, so we're looking forward to it as we continue on to finish our first semester. Another part that I wanted to talk about is actually Kid Space, because I wanted to give you an update. We said that there was a Kid Space job fair, and we appreciate HR working with it. We actually had 30 people that actually signed up, but 8 attended, okay, and we actually employed 5 of those. For our last 5 weeks, we've actually had 23 applicants for Kid Space. We've actually offered positions to 17, and so we applaud 17. Which meant that 80 families were then notified to come off the waiting list. So we're getting there gradually. During this fall break, we've had 175 students that actually enrolled in our Chaparral and Lookout Mountain type of Kid Space, so that if parents still had to work, that they were enrolled in that. Our ASA program, Travel Around the World, have 1,600 students, and so they're working with them. I think one of our more innovative programs, that is for 22 schools for our ASA, but we have 2 schools that did not qualify for ASA, Sunset and Saguaro, so that they're actually working with Grand Canyon University. And we have teacher leads working with students from Grand Canyon that are part of the education program. And so they come in and actually teach our students at both Saguaro and Sunset. And it's really beneficial to both parties. It's beneficial to the students that are part of Grand Canyon. First of all, they're working with real students, okay? It's beneficial to our students. These students are closer to their age. They're sort of like role models to them. It just is a really close collaboration, and I'll be honest with you, it's a great recruitment for us too, because these are future teachers that are coming into our system. So I wanted to let you know about that kind of collaboration we have with Grand Canyon. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Mr. Mangley will provide a human resource report update. Mr. Mangley.
Governing Board Adams, Governing Board members, Dr. Stanton, distinguished guests out there. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our teachers, classified staff, along with our administrations out there serving our community at the highest level of fidelity of care and concern. So thank you to them. Really appreciate their efforts. I do want to share with the Governing Board that October 28th, we have our Jobapalooza Job Fair. It's a community outreach with our community members that might be unemployed, that are dealing with it. We work directly with the unemployment services, and it's a special invite, and we're always invited to be a part of that, and it's a pleasure to serve and provide that opportunity with that. There's a total of 28 companies that engage in that, and we're the only school district that actually participates in that, so I'm excited to celebrate that with you tonight. We do have a transportation job fair coming up October 26th, so we're excited about that. And then I'd like to celebrate a job fair we just finished on October 7th, specifically focused on our custodian positions that we're in dire need of. And that was a success. I believe we ended up hiring 3 custodians out of that. These job fairs are really short and quick. They're give or take around 1 to 2 hours, and it attracts give or take anywhere from 10 to 30 people. And we have a process that takes place right then and there. The HR department, the payroll department, everybody's involved. It's like an assembly line, if you will. If they come in, if they have all the proper documents and everything, we can get them to work pretty quick, other than reference checks and background checks. So it's an exciting little process that our HR team works hard with the payroll department to put together. So kudos to those staff members doing that. I'd like to share with the board also, we have about 8.5 FTE certified positions still open out there. And then would like to also share that our substitute pool that we have is approximately around 135 substitutes that are actively in our system. We're not getting the engagement that we'd like to get, but we do have 135 in our substitute pool. And then finally, our classified FTE is approximately around 275 FTE vacancies. And those positions that are affected the most, I think it's important to share, is our parapro, kid space, bus driver, food services, and custodians. And as you notice, the theme of our job fairs are focusing on that and trying other creative options as well. So that'll be my updates. Thank you for your time tonight.
I will add, our good friend Justin Wing put out, if you saw recently, the ASPA update, and it's shows in the state of Arizona some of the challenges that Mr. Mattingly mentioned is across the state of Arizona. It's not a specific Washington issue. It's a statewide issue that the state and we all have to solve together. But Steve, I appreciate totally the work you guys are doing. I just know that the pool is what it is, so thanks for all the efforts. Danny Brown will update us in regards to our business services update. Danny.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Stanton. Just give a brief update here. I want to thank the board for approving the AFR this evening. So we are finishing up the fiscal year end and working through that. Really, the only main item we have left is finishing up the CAFR, and the board will be seeing that in the next couple months. We're now, as Dr. Stanton always says, always hitting the ground running on everything. We're now prepping for the revised budget for December. So we go from one giant task to the next. And then I would like to give a update for PPE with next week, with school starting back next week. We got a kind donation from Maricopa County and the state of Arizona. We have over 15,000 masks of different varieties and sizes, including the disposable and cloth masks. We have received those. We received over 1,500 hand sanitizer bottles. And just delivered this afternoon, so actually a day early, we received more of the instant test Bionex tests that were going to be delivered. This is scheduled to start delivering to the schools, and just a little bit information here. We will be sending out approximately 220 boxes of masks to the schools, and those are being delivered based off the student population of the school. We have 2 2-ounce bottles of hand sanitizer that will go to every employee at the school so that they can have that. We have 4 boxes of gloves, 2 medium, 2 large. And then we will have 3 boxes, and there's 24 test kits in each box of the Bionex sets that will be delivered. So those will be delivered, starting to be delivered tomorrow and throughout next week. And then also just another quick update, as was presented earlier with ESSER dollars. We did purchase with some remaining ESSER 1 dollars, some more masks at just over 200,000 masks that will hopefully be here next week. So we are getting ready for it and ensuring that we have as many PPE items that we can. So thank you very much.
Under Academic Services, Mrs. Mora will provide an update. Mrs. Mora.
Thank you, President Adams. Governing board members, we successfully completed the first quarter right before fall break, and so we will be having parent-teacher conferences when we get back, and that's an exciting opportunity for our families to connect with their child's teacher to get an update on where they're at and where we're headed. During that time, report cards will be distributed. And so we do encourage our families to make the time and the opportunity to really connect with your child's teacher so you can have a clear understanding of what we've accomplished this first quarter. Our schools are prepared to offer those both in person as well as virtual for those families that can't make it in. So we do appreciate the efforts the schools are putting in, along with the translation department, to make sure that we have those services available for our families as well. As you heard us talking earlier, through the ESSER funds, there will be a focus on interventions this next quarter. We've been using the diagnostic tools. We're identifying where our students need additional support and skills, and so we're going to be looking at those strong instructional strategies that all students need to be successful, but then also the interventions to support specific needs, and then developing of the additional skills. So that will be a strong focus this second quarter. And then, as you heard tonight with the ESSER update, all of the grants have been submitted to ADE at this point, and they're being reviewed. As I shared, we did receive word today on ESSER 2. There were just some very, very minor corrections that needed to be put in there, which is extremely impressive given the magnitude of that grant and all that had to go into that. So I cannot begin to thank enough Danny's team in Business Services, along with our federal grants team. They have been just working tirelessly to get this done and have been really just going line by line to find those little errors. And so we can't thank them enough for all their work and all that they put into that. And once again, that collaboration between our departments will continue as we move through the remainder of the grants. ESSER 3 has been submitted, and we're hoping to hear from that soon and make any adjustments that we need. But once again, the teamwork that's been going through those departments is greatly appreciated, and shout out to the staff that's involved. So thank you.
Mr. President, members of the board, members of the audience, then under the superintendent's update, as we've been doing, if everybody saw the Maricopa County health update today, our cases per 100,000 went down a little bit by about 12%. Positivity went up just a touch with about like 0.3, so kind of stayed roughly the same. I see Ms. Tucker, you got it on the screen, so there you go. We still remain in the case rate, percent positivity, and transmission level of high. As Mrs. Fernandez and I have been doing for many, many months, the FDA's review team will be meeting on October 26th regarding Pfizer's request for emergency use authorization for children ages 5 through 11. So one thing, potentially a note we just got to be focused on is that they will be coming in different labeled vials than the vials that were used for adults. Right now that's different. So it wouldn't be that you would take you wouldn't take out the vaccine from a current one. They'd actually have its own vials. So hopefully those productions will be getting, assuming, I guess I shouldn't assume anything, but we'll wait and see until October 26th. But that actually could be some good news for the opportunity for our students, for those that choose to have a vaccine. But that at least October 26th. It will be a 2-series shots. That's very similar as for those of you that as adults got them. There would be one, and then a couple weeks later there'd be another. So that was the main information, I think, from today's webinar, and that was helpful. And then I want to thank everybody as we are preparing for October 18th, as Dr. Bailey mentioned. We are prepared and ready to go on Monday. We'll deploy to help the schools in whatever they need. We will be ready Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we'll see where we are, and we'll work together as a team on that as well. Some of the things that have come up throughout this whole process, we did an FAQs with our principals and others. When will we look at this? So that's part of the discussion. I did see some of our sister districts were saying at least before winter break, and then the opportunity for students, again, to be considered for vaccinations. As soon as we know that type of information, we'll try to get that out there, because then our kids, again, I say over and over again, opportunity to get get a vaccine for the 5 to 11-year-olds along the way. So that I think I'll conclude, and my team will take questions.
Board members. Ms. Lambert.
Thank you. You'll have to forgive me, I'm just new back to the game. I don't know, Dr. Bailey, what ASA is.
I'm sorry,
That's all right.
after school academy.
After School Academy. Okay, I should have.
My fault, sorry.
It's okay. And Mr. Mattingly, for the FTE that are open, what areas is that a classroom teacher? You said 8.5 FTEs were still open. Is that classroom, special ed, special areas?
Governing Board Adams, Governing Board Lambert, the 8.5 FTE ranges from the intermediate grade in our elementary, and then we have 2 at the middle school, and then we have 1.5 in our special area, and then we have 3 FTE in our special education area for resource self-contained.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I only have one more. Sorry. Ms. Mara, you talked about the parent-teacher conferences. How are we going to support our teachers who have to deal with conflict over what they're coming back to? It's their first week back, and that's going to be their first opportunity to go face-to-face with somebody in the district.
If I can, I'll actually defer that to Dr. Bailey. She's been working on those plans.
President Adams, members of the board, Ms. Lambert, you're talking about parent-teacher conferences and conflict over the mask mandate, okay? Well, our teachers are extremely sensitive to what's happening, so I have every confidence that they'll be able to handle that. If we had a number of parents that have signed up for virtual, to tell you the truth, and some of our conferences are right after the break. Some of them are the second or third week that are coming up. So hopefully some of this will have been, actually rectified by then. So I have every confidence. Our teachers and our administrators, I know will work through every single conflict.
And I'm not worried about how they would respond. I'm just worried about supporting them, because this emotional topic, I don't want them to have to deal with the vitriol that we've dealt with. I want to just make sure that there's something they can do, or if they have to deal with it, what they can do. So if you've thought that out and you know what you're going to do, then I'm good to go. I just don't want them to be caught in the middle. President
Adams, members of the board, principals that I've talked to that have actually dealt with parents, even though the parents have been pretty adamant about voicing their opinions, they've also still been very respectful towards teachers and towards administrators. Yeah. So I think that will still come through, especially that homeschool communication, that's so paramount, and that what Mrs. Moore talked about, really looking at students for the first time being back for a complete 9-week period for a lot of our students. So really working on that collaboration type of thing. So I'm extremely hopeful that it will work out, to tell you the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Adams. Thank you all for your presentations. And first of all, Ms. Mora, thank you for meeting with us ahead of time on the ESSER. That really helped me a lot to learn a lot more about how hard everybody has worked on this whole, all of the grants and the money, and really using the money the best way that we can for the needs of our district. So thank you very much for that. And Dr. Bailey, thank you for clarifying as well on what will happen on a dress code violation and so forth. I understand how dress code violations go, having a teenage daughter, so I know exactly what happens. And so thank you very much. Okay, and then also, Mr. Mattingly, thank you for Jobapalooza. That sounds like fun. I appreciate all of your job fairs. I'm not sure if I missed this in the spring when I was, beginning my time here on the board, but I know that Justin probably did a lot of job fairs, but I appreciate you doing so many of these. And although we may only get 3 or 4 people who actually are employed from them, it's priceless, right? Because I don't know how else you get people. And so thank you for these little snippets of job fairs you're doing, specializing specifically in transportation, although I do volunteer to drive the buses, but apparently you have to have your CDL for that. Okay, fine, your CDL. Oh, okay, fine. Woo. Anyway, my children say no. But thank you for all, and the fun names too. But I really do appreciate this because, again, if you get a couple people every time, that's awesome. So thank you for that. And then thank you, Mr. O'Brien, for all of the PPE and putting this together so quickly to get so many things donated, which is wonderful, but then also to purchase all of these masks to have them available. Clearly, kids who've been wearing their masks probably will have some, and then, I know kids have been needing them for the buses and so forth, but thank you, I really appreciate that, and then handing out the hand sanitizers and all of that. So thank you very much for working so quickly putting that together. And then Dr. Stanton, thank you for doing an awesome job. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Thank you. I did just want to acknowledge all the work that's been happening in preparation for us reopening. Some of the stuff was already happening with, some of the PPE stuff and the job fairs and all of that stuff, but I understand that there's also this additional part where there are people, that are some in the community that are upset. And we knew that going in, that this is not, an issue that everybody is on the same page with. And so I respect that people are going to be upset and voice that opinion, but I agree with you that for the most part, the consent, we have gotten some unprofessional or kind of nasty emails, but I think a lot of them have just been, this is my frustration, this is my point of view, which is absolutely their right to do. So, and I do have every confidence that our staff is going to prepare that. I hope that they know that they can always turn it back to the superintendent, and of course we continue to get the emails too, so that you can tell them to email us if you need to. But I do want to acknowledge that there is this unknown of what it's going to look like, but I also have faith in our community that it will not be as large and looming, because I think for the most part people do can agree to disagree and be respectful for that. So I look forward to seeing how it goes. I hope that this moves forward with the understanding that it really is just in an effort to create the safest, healthiest environment we possibly can so that kids can stay in school. I think that the only question that I had was about the parent-teacher conferences. Having been through, going through them last year and the years past, I know that it could be different at every campus. Every teacher kind of does it differently. Usually you get, the report card, and you get some testing data, and you get maybe a couple of writing samples, and maybe there's some conversation about how your kid does in the class. But I'm kind of wondering, with everything that's going on right now, has there been any kind of guidance out there of what the focus of these teacher conferences should be? And is it more of a, where are they at and what do they need, or is it going to be the basic, like, here's your report card and your test scores? What is that going to look like?
Mr. Adams, members of the board, we were very, very extremely fortunate to actually have diagnostic instruments, and we want to go through those diagnostic assessments with our teacher, with the teachers, with the parents. So that's going to be part of it. Also, we gave the panorama, so that assessment's to begin with. Also, this is the time that teachers can actually reinforce their curricular types of expectations for the year. As you know, usually we have curricular meetings and open houses, and those did not happen. So a lot of that is going to come through on our parent-teacher conferences. They're really going to go what the expectations are for the year, as well as what are the different types of classwork, homework, and those types of assignments. So diagnostic, definitely going through that and going through those ELA, math, as well as the panorama. And then also they will have the interim assessments. So the assessments plus the certainly the report card, but the most important part is not necessarily the report card. It's really building up that parent-school communication and really building up that we're here to really support your child, and how can we do that together. So.
Okay, that's kind of what I was getting to, because it's been so hard, you know, and if we're just focusing on assessments or grades, that might not be that might not look the best, or might not be what the child is used to. And so just didn't want people to feel really bogged down with that. It sounds like they have the tools to show, like, hey, this is how we're gonna get your child better, and please tell us, you know, how things are going in the classroom. So I just wanted to make sure that they had tools to have a meaningful conversation, and that it wasn't kind of left to them to just, you know, come up with something.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for the reports. As always, it's very, very informative, and it gives us a lot of insight. My mind is racing in regards to what your week's going to look like next week. And while this mask mandate is under the direction of a dress code, there are still going to be a number of parents that may not have gotten the word, being on spring fall break, and so there's going to be a lot of confusion over the first 3 days, I can only assume. I agree with the professionalism of our staff, our teachers, and our principals. And starting with the principals, I just want to thank you all, and wish you all the best next week. I'm trying to visualize my wife being in this position, what she's going to do when parents come in, or even at a parent-teacher meeting. I would ask the community to take a breath, and if there is frustration, it was this board's decision to go the direction that they went. Please do not take it out on our staff. Don't take it out on our principals. Don't take it out on our teachers. Don't take it out on our bus drivers. And I can go down the line. Please. We're elected officials. We know what we got into. And like I said previously, the emails that we get, 99% of them are professional. And while passionate, we do respect and we do hear you. So if you would, over the next week or so, please, again, take a breath and give us a call, or not a call, please email us. Let's keep it on paper so that we can have it on record. But again, thank you all for what you do next week. God bless you. And keep your head up. We'll get through this. And community, we will all get through this as a family. Just thank you all for what you do. God, I can keep going. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. With no further comments, again, thank you all for your reports. They were wonderful, very informative. So that brings us to requests for future agenda items. Does anybody have anything? Yes, ma'am.
If we just went through our 40th day count, if we could have a report of the 40th day count that's used to calculate the free and reduced lunch and our percentages at our schools, and just a report for all of us, I'd appreciate. Thank you.
Lindsay, no. Okay, thank you. With that, may I have a motion to call for executive session, please?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
And we are now in recess. I'd like to call the general's meeting back into session, and with Mr. Brown's approval, I'd like to ask for a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody,
Good
and
night.
thank you very much for everything you do.
Nobody else knows.
I did.
I caught that too. I was like,